When we're creating any interactive sketch, it's often useful to be able to put type and text up on the screen. Processing gives us a great bunch of tools for doing this, and in this video, we'll take a look at the essentials. Here are the basic ideas. We start with a typeface. This is a collection of letters and numbers and punctuation that someone has created and saved in a file. Of course, most of us on our computers have not just one typeface, but lots of them. So it would be great to be able to mix and match these in the same sketch, and we absolutely can do that. Here's the basic outline for how to create typography in your sketch. On the left, I'll show you the processing code, and on the right is the output it creates. The first thing we need to do is to create the font object. In processing, we don't talk to the fonts directly. Instead, we create this intermediate object called a font object. So if I wanted to use these 4 different fonts in my program, I would create 4 different font objects. Now we can only use one at a time, so the second thing we'll do is tell processing which one we want to use. We make one of these objects the active object. Great, now that we have an active font object, all we have to do is draw a string. So here's an example output on our window. If we want, at that point, we can then choose another font. We'll make that font active, we'll draw another string, and it comes out in the new font. So we can keep changing our fonts and drawing new strings. Let's take a look at the processing calls to actually implement these steps. Just as numbers are of type int and float, and strings are of type string, fonts are of type P font, P for processing. Notice that both the P and the F are capitalized. So here I'm creating a font object called F1. So far it doesn't have anything in it, but it's ready to become a font object. The way it becomes a font object is we assign it the value that comes back from the routine load font. And again, notice the capital F in the middle. Load font takes one argument. It's the name of a file on your disk. And I'll show you in a moment how to create that file. But they typically have the kind of name I'm showing you. First is the name of the font. Here the font is named Arno. Then a dash. The size of the font that you want to use. Here it's 48 points. And then .vlw. VLW is the extension for a font file, just like TXT or DOC or JPEG are the extensions for other kinds of files. Of course, we can combine these 2 lines into one. So here I'm declaring F1 to be a variable of type P font, and I'm initializing it with the Arno font. So if I use P1, I'm going to be drawing characters from this font. I can create another font too. So here I'm going to load a font called Metro, also at 48 points. And if I make this one active, I'm drawing characters from this font. Now I make one of the fonts active, and we do that by calling text font. This is just like telling processing what fill color to use or what stroke color to use and then drawing something. Here instead we say, here's the font to use. From now on, everything will be drawn in that font. So by calling text font F1, I'm saying from now on, everything gets drawn with the font referred to by the variable F1. So this is our active font. Now we're ready to draw a string, and we do that by calling text. Text takes 3 arguments. First, a string, the stuff you want to type out, followed by an X and Y. And the default meaning of those X and Y is that that is the bottom left corner of the string. So here I'm saying draw the word kiwi fruit at 100, 200. And if we look at the graphics window on the right, we can see that 100, 200 is picking out this point, and then it draws the word kiwi fruit in the current font. Just for fun, let's draw another string with another font. So I'll make another font active, in this case F2. Now this is the active font. I'll draw another text string, cherries 2, at X of 20, Y of 400. Looking again at the graphics window, at 2400, that's the bottom left corner, and now it prints out cherries 2 in the new typeface. That's pretty much the essentials of writing with text. There are, of course, a whole bunch of little subtleties and variations, and we'll get into those, but this is the basic idea. The one thing we haven't discussed is how to create these font files. They're not the font files that you might download, which come, say, in TrueType or OpenType format. Instead, these are special files that you create from those inside of processing. I'll show you the mechanism for creating a VLW file. Here's a little program that just types out the word strawberries. If you take a look at setup, it does the normal things at the top, smooth and size. Then I have a call to load font, and right now the argument is 3 exclamation points because I don't yet know what goes in there. Of course, if I tried to run it this way, I'd get an error. I'm going to fix that in a moment. But let's finish looking at the program. The output of load font gets saved in a variable of type P font, which I'm calling my font. And then the very next thing I do is I say text font, my font. That tells processing, hey, this is now the active font. From now on, use this. Draw is also really simple. It sets the background to white and the fill color, or the color it's going to use to draw characters, to black. And then I call text. And the message I'm typing is the string strawberries, and it's at XY of 4200. So let's go back to these 3 exclamation points in load font. What goes in there? We know it's going to be a file name of some kind. That means we'll wrap it in double quotes, because the way we give processing a file name is by handing it as a string, and that means inside of double quotes. As I've said, this is not one of those files that you download from the web and install on your system. This is a file you create from those files in processing. And now I'll show you how to do that. If you go up to the processing menu bar at the top of the screen, you'll notice one of the entries is called Tools. If you bring that down, the second entry, at least on the Mac, the second entry, is called Create Font. This is the tool that lets us create fonts. So let's select it. It brings up this tool. The big window at the top is all of the fonts that you've installed on your system. These are the ones you download and install. And if you select different fonts, you get a nice preview just below it. So I'm going to go all the way down to the G's. I want to pick Gill Sans Ultra Bold. Big, strong typeface. Just beneath the preview, we can say what size we want to use. And if I type in a small value here, I'll get tiny type. If I type in a huge value, like, I don't know, 200, I'll get huge type. So let's go to 48. That's a pretty good size. And now I have a checkbox called Smooth. I always leave this on. If you turn this off, you just get chunky looking type, which maybe is a nice special effect now and then, but almost always you're going to want nice smooth text. Just beneath that checkbox, you can see a preview of the name of the file that processing is going to make for us. In this case, it begins with Gill Sans Ultra Bold, because that's the name of the typeface, followed by -48, and that's processing adding in for us the size of the file. Notice also at the far right-hand edge, we have .vlw. That's processing telling us that the file name ends in .vlw, and don't forget that. I actually wish it was part of the file name string here in this window, but unfortunately it's not. So here's what I recommend you do. Select the file name and copy it. And you can also use the keyboard shortcut if you like. And then say OK. This creates the file, and I'll show it to you in a moment where it goes. Now go back to your program, find the line that has your load font on it, and in between the 2 double quotes, simply paste what you just copied. And unfortunately, you have to remember to type the .vlw yourself. With that done, we're ready to run the program. Let's run it. And there's our word strawberries. So great, that worked beautifully. Now I created this file that ended in .vlw. Where is it located? I'll show you that. Here's the folder that holds my sketch. If I open this folder, you'll notice it has 2 objects inside. There's the .pde file, that's the program itself, and processing has created for us automatically a new folder called data. Inside of data is the file we just made. So when you create a font file, it gets stored inside the same folder. Let's look at it this way. You can see that inside of the Creating Fonts Demo folder, we have the file creating fonts demo.pde and a folder called data, and inside of data is the .vlw file. If we created additional fonts, they would all go into the data folder. I want to mention a fun thing called a Pangram. This is something that people use to preview a font. It's a single sentence that uses all the letters of the alphabet. The most famous Pangram is probably "A quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog." This uses every lowercase letter at least once. Notice that this is the lazy dog, not a lazy dog, or we'd be missing the lowercase t and h. Just for fun, here are a few more. These are really just for fun, but they're also useful because when you're previewing a font, you can just look at all the letters from A to Z, but it's also helpful to see how they look when they're actually used to typeset some real text. To recap, to use a font, first you load it, then you make it active, and then you draw text. To load it, you create an object of type pfont, and then you use load font to load the font from the .vlw file, which processing made when you use the little tool and stuck into that data folder, and it assigns it to your variable. And of course, you can put both of these into a single line. Step 2 is make the font active. All you have to do is call text font, notice the capital F, with the name of the font object. Step 3, draw text. You call text with the string and the XY of the bottom left corner. So for example, if the text is Honeycrisp apples and the X and Y is 100, 150, at 100, 150, we type the word Honeycrisp apples. That's it. In the next few videos, we'll take a look at some more details, but this is the essence of drawing text in your programs.